Hey, so this is a cold open, and you know what I got planned for you?
What?
Opening the freezer because it's cold, and it opens, and there's food in it.
Hey, I found his dad!
I think Dad has made some excellent progress today.
Your dad, he's a fun guy, right?
And I love him so much, and I think he's the greatest dad in the world.
Welcome back to Working on the Dad Pod. I'm Alex. He's Ethan. And tonight we are managing the meltdown. We came up with a lot of other words to describe it, and I forgot all of them as soon as I started talking. They were all alliterative puns, but tonight we
Indeed.
are discussing how we manage when our kids are feeling their feelings to the fullest extent,
Sure.
and how we transition the tantrum, right? Get all that. But before that, we'll do story time. After that, we'll do working on the dad bod. And this is your reminder to like and subscribe wherever you follow your podcast. I feel like this is the lowest energy intro, so I would encourage you to go to our YouTube channel at Working on the Dad Pod. Find us wherever you get your podcasts and listen to some older episodes where maybe I was just a little peppier. I don't know. But speaking of pep, that's what Ethan's here for. Ethan, how you doing, man?
Yeah. I am the guy that normally puts the pep in the step. I will say before I get into story time that if I was in fact a meltdown manager, I very much got demoted tonight. We had quite the meltdown that transitioned to tantrum. That was another good alliterative pun you mentioned during the intro. I wanted you to know I noticed that. And I did not manage the meltdown. Yeah, I did not manage the meltdown well at all. That said, I did remember what I wanted my story time to be. So, as some of you may know, in fact, most of you do, because I believe I've mentioned it, I am the head coach of the 5 and 6 year old Navy Blue Whale Sharks of Tacoma Park Soccer. We are the greatest non competitive dynasty the league has ever seen. And never lost a game. And this last Sunday, my two assistant coaches happened to both be out of town. So I was solo coaching with just the help of some parent volunteers to help shag balls and, help corral while I was running the drills. And every practice, we end with the kids doing their scrimmage and against one another. Half the team wears yellow pennies, the other half remains in their navy blue whale shark attire. And there's a little girl on the team. I'm not going to name her, but she joined the second week. And she was very scared from the get-go. Or not scared, but nervous and shy. The first practice, her mom had to hold her hand the entire time, which was tough on her mom, just literally hand holding playing soccer with a bunch of 5 and 6 year olds. And then the second practice, it got a little bit better, but there was a lot of reverting back to the mom when things got tricky. And then this last practice, her dad was with her most of the time, but she kind of pawned it off with on the fact that other parents were around helping because there was one less coach. And we got to the scrimmage. And during the scrimmage, it was just the kids on the field, aside from some parents helping me track down and referee and keep things in bounds. And, earlier in the practice, we were doing drills where each kid needed to have a teammate, and we practiced passing and stopping with both feet. And toward the end of the scrimmage, my daughter accidentally ended up on a breakaway, and in a missed shot attempt, she inadvertently passed it to this little girl, and she actually stopped it, set, and scored a goal by herself. And I turned to see what if her parents saw, and if I ever saw two parents look like kids in a candy store, first time going to Disney World. Those were the two happiest parents I had ever seen, jumping, screaming, cheering. In fact, all of the other parents who have been there every week and watched this little girl be so shy, everybody cheered. And I called the scrimmage and practiced there, and everybody was cheering her name, saying, yay, yay, yay. And even though
out of Rudy.
I know it was wonderful, and it felt great. You know, I'm obviously not a serious coach. I joke a lot with the kids, and I use my whistle to make myself sound a little more, Quantico-esque. But for the most part, it is just very, very chill. But it was so great to see her really come out of her shell over a 4-week period and just have some fun, and then just to see her parents so happy made me feel really good about the hour a week I dedicate to this endeavor. So, what about you?
You're not coaching soccer players. You're molding young people
For
their future beyond soccer, right?
The 2042 World Cup is important to me.
Yeah. Hasn't really crossed my mind lately, but sure. My story time is actually also about soccer practice. My son started doing soccer at the Y. I mentioned he had done basketball, and he's been doing soccer this month. The 3 to 5-year-olds have even less structure, where they just do it for a month, right? It's just a 4-week session once a month. So if there's 5 weeks in the month, sorry, you don't get an extra session, but doing it at the Y. And really, I don't have some big victory. He seems pretty naturally athletic based on his throwing talent and his hitting talent and all those kinds of things. But he is not what I would call someone who has just like taken to soccer. But he enjoys the heck out of it. And the thing that impresses me the most, and this happens with my son, it's also happened with my daughter at the golf course, is watching them do something completely foreign to their bodies and pick it up so quickly. And I don't mean like, oh, my kids are just supernatural athletes and like they're amazing. It's watching all of the kids learn to do something that their bodies couldn't fathom doing like 5 minutes ago. The concept of my son, first soccer practice a few weeks ago, to stop the ball, he would kind of wave at it with his foot, really attempting to kick it, not stepping on top of it. And then he would chase after it after he missed that and pick it up with his hands and set it back where he wanted it to go. And we kept yelling at him, no hands, no hands. And the idea for him of standing on one foot and then controlling his other foot enough to stop a soccer ball without busting his ass seemed kind of scary. And then he tried it and he kind of missed and he fell over. And he's kind of a tough little guy. You go, I'm okay. And so he got back up and he did it again. And the same with my daughter, who swinging a golf club was doing pretty well. But we went out and played golf this past weekend. We played 9 holes, just she and I. Had a fantastic time. But she had some moments where she's just like not getting it. She's taking like 10 swings and not making contact, getting a little frustrated. And I just told her, like, go easy and remember, brush the grass. We were on the driving range and like I was taking my driver and sort of flicking with my wrist and brushing the grass. And she was like, how are you making the grass make that sound? And I go, I'm just brushing the grass. And she started working on that and getting that. And I said, just remember to brush the grass. Just try brushing the grass next time. And she did that. She made contact. She goes, yeah, but that wasn't very good. I was like, yes, but you made contact. And if you keep doing that exact same thing, the next shot will probably be better. The very next shot, she hit it about 50 yards, her best shot of the day. For her, a 6-year-old who's been playing golf for 3 weeks, that was striping it, right? So that was fantastic. And so shout out to kids and their resilience sometimes on the physical stuff of the things that kind of seem scary or frustrating to them, and things they can't do. And shout out to like my kids, especially, who have felt scared or disheartened by things. When my son did basketball 2 months ago. He's frustrated. He's not big enough and strong enough to get it to the hoop to score on the shortest setting with a youth-sized ball. But you know what? He wanted to sign up for basketball again. He wanted to go back at it. He wanted to keep trying. And he wants to get better, even if it's not the, even if he's not quite there yet. So, that not really one individual story, but just the idea of them being resilient.
That's great. That's awesome.
Is a weird transition into the topic for tonight, where they're not so resilient. So this topic, I think this is probably going to be one that's full of anecdotes. For those of you that like to hear stories, I don't think story time is going to be over anytime soon, because I think we're probably going to talk about some of the times we succeeded and some of the times we failed with meltdowns. I don't think this needs a ton of intro, but I think there are things that I have gleaned from my failures and my successes that have helped me get better going forward, right? And it's like figuring out on a basic level, like what I'm even trying to accomplish when my kid's melting down, how to actually handle it, and like what the sort of short-term and long-term goals and sort of managing those are. So I don't know if you want me to start with sort of what led me to this moment, or if you want to go ahead. I'm okay with either.
No, I'll just kick it off, because this is quite raw for me. So today is day 1 of 3 total, today, tomorrow, and Monday, where the girls do not have school for, they don't have preschool for spring break / Easter weekend.
Sure.
So I dropped the girls off at my mother-in-law's this morning. I then went to work from there. My wife got off work before me, so she went and picked them up, brought them back. And so I had some time home alone before everybody got home, where I started getting to work on dinner. Now, dinner was Parmesan crusted fish with matzah instead of breadcrumbs, because it is in fact Passover. And this is a dish that my kids eat fairly regularly with some rice. And I believe I mentioned on the podcast before, but if I have not, my 5.5-year-old is extremely stubborn, and my wife calls it independence. I sometimes feel that it's just honestly a little bit spoiled, but when she will she will refuse to eat essentially anything that's not one of 3 things: Pancake Wednesday, Pizza Friday, or the occasional restaurant. And it can be really frustrating when she is not eating her food. And then she complains that she's hungry. So, I'm trying to cook dinner tonight. For some reason, I think it was the matzah, to be honest. The fish got a little burnt. It made the kitchen smoky. I opened the windows. That made everybody unhappy to smell the smoke. I made a double portion of rice. The rice was a little soggy. Things just weren't going great. So I was not feeling too good about my cooking tonight, when these are things that I normally nail. And then we were already off to a late start. I wanted my daughters to come to the table for dinner. They said, "Can we just finish the game?" Their mom said yes. There was clearly a misunderstanding on what finish and the game meant. So I repeatedly asked them to come to the table. They kept not. I was getting annoyed. And then at some point, from walking to the table where my wife says she heard her say, "Yay, fish," it went to, "I'm not eating that." And then her yelling and me saying, "I don't want to hear you yell. I just want to see you eat." And then she would talk back. And I said, "Please stop talking. All you have to do is eat. I don't actually care about what you have to say on to why you don't want to eat. Just eat." And then she would grab her fork and put it down and say something. And eventually she yelled, I yelled, we both kept yelling. I took some toys away. She still didn't eat. She stuck her tongue out at me. I took some more toys away. And frankly, I said, I don't know why you can't listen to this one word instruction: eat. Stop talking and eat, or more bad things are going to happen to you. And then she started screaming that she was a bad kid, which nobody said to her. And all I said was, I just want you to eat. But I definitely didn't say it as calmly as I did now. And long story short, she eventually left the table without finishing her dinner and sat in her room. I finished my dinner. I'm arguing with my wife. I looked to my 2-year-old and I said, "Do you mind if I go lie down, sweetheart?" She said, "Okay, Daddy." So both my daughter and I are both in our respective beds, in our rooms, not talking to anybody, and I did not manage the meltdown. So, yeah. So don't do that, everybody. Alex, what was how you how have you been a better manager than I have been today?
Yes.
Good.
But
I hope so.
it's crazy because I think like there are a ton of parallels between your oldest and mine, in some of the ways that they act. And so I actually have a couple of stories that are similar. So this idea came to me on Tuesday night.
Mm-hmm.
We were getting ready for bed. We get ready for bed. Their Alexa plays Brush Your Teeth by Sesame Street and Elmo. It's an absolute bop if you've never heard it. Play it when your kids are getting ready for bed. They will get hyped. Brush, brushy, brush, brushy, brush, brush. It's fantastic. But the kids have some pull-out drawers coming from underneath their bed, store various things underneath them, but they're not like attached to the bed structure. They're just separate roll under drawers. And they had pulled one out full of their like dress up stuff, their character clothing or whatever. My daughter decides that she's going to have it 90 degrees and is like pushing it with her legs and like not really trying to put it away.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, definitely trying to not get ready for bed, not get her clothes off to put on her pajamas, not make moves to the bathroom to go potty, to brush teeth, all those things. And it's like, we have been very clear with our kids of like, we don't care whether you go pajamas, brush teeth, brush hair, potty, or any order. It does not need to be in a certain order. You just need to get it all done. So it gives them some freedom of choice. You want to go potty first? You want to put on PJs first? Great. You get to pick. Fine. She wasn't doing any of that. And so I asked her a couple times to please stop. I was like, I need you. I was about as calm as I am now. I need you to not do that. I need you to get ready for bed. And she kept doing it. And so I reached down and grabbed her ankle to pull her foot away from the drawer. And at that exact moment that I grabbed her ankle, she released all tension from her leg that she was using to push this fairly heavy drawer. And so I, in pulling her knee, popped it right into her face. And I immediately apologized. It's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I was just trying to pull your foot off the drawer. Damage was done. She starts screaming. She starts huffing. She starts puffing. She hates me. She doesn't want to live in this house anymore. She's up at the front door, hugging it, threatening to walk away and never return. And so what my wife and I have devised is a little bit of a unspoken system. When she's really mad at one of us, the other one kind of tags in, because we're like, we're going to have better odds right now. Whether the grown-up is upset or not, it's not really important. She's mad at that grown-up. And so my wife goes and really has to force her, like force brush her teeth, make her sit on the potty, make her do all these things. And she comes in, she's getting on her pajamas. I'm already reading her brother's book, and I finish it before she gets her pajamas on. And our rule is very simple. You have 10 minutes to do all those things, and you have a little bit of a grace period. I start reading at 7:45. If I finish your sibling's book and you are not ready and have not picked out a book, you lose your book for the night. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, of course, my daughter didn't see it that way. She saw it as me punishing her because she called me a poopy head. And this is where I have a lot of growth, is like, I wanted to argue that point instead of sticking to the real reason I did it. I'm like, I could take it away for that because you shouldn't have done that. And it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I was taking it away because of the time thing. And I should have just stuck to that, because then she starts arguing, trying to argue with me back and forth. And I just said, it's over. It's done with it. I'm sorry. They get in their bed. She's still crying. She's pouting, calling me a poopy head, left, right, and center. And my son looks at me and he's just like, she's using a lot of poopy words. And I go, yeah, she's pretty mad at me. She wants to fight with me, really. She wants to have a fight right now. But I don't want to have a fight with your sister. I love your sister and I care about your sister. And I was just saying that for his benefit of like why, explaining what was happening, really, just commentating on it. And for whatever reason, saying that sequence of words, my daughter goes, I don't know why I want to fight. You had made an accident. You didn't do it on purpose. And I just got so mad. And then it turned into, I'm the worst kid. I can't do anything right. Everybody else is kind and I'm mean and I can't do anything right. And I'm just like, listen, this is not because you're a bad kid. This is because it's bedtime. There's a reason it's bedtime. It is harder for me to control my emotions when I'm tired. It's harder for you. It is harder for everyone when you are tired. Your body is tired, but your mind is tired too. And so I had to explain that to her. She went to bed smiling, hugging, and happy. But my takeaway from that was just sort of like, let her have the meltdown. Right? It's one of those where, like, I think I have very much in the past, and I think some of this is just an extra year of experience over you, right? Like, I can't say that this is something that I've been doing for 3-4 years. It's been maybe a few months where this has kind of clicked for me, where my daughter does the exact same thing as yours does of, I don't want that. Hasn't even tried it. Maybe has loved it a dozen times. I'm not eating. And it's taken a lot of work for me to go, okay, don't. But that's the food offered. If you want any other food, you're going to have to eat that. Right? And we've done some other tactics of like, you can make yourself peanut butter and jelly, but I've kind of taken that off the table and haven't mentioned that in a long, long time. Mostly because she just leaves the kitchen a mess. Like there's peanut butter smears all over the counter. And I'm like, what the heck are you doing? I don't want to have to clean this up. It's just impractical for me. Sure. And I don't want her to just like subsist on peanut butter and jellies. So I just go, okay, but if you don't eat, you're not getting snack. And I've had a couple of times where one or both of my kids have eaten a couple bites of dinner, say, I don't want any more, and have decided that they are done eating for the night. And maybe they come back 20, 30 minutes later and they eat some more of their food. Maybe they don't, right? There's been a few times where they just haven't. And I'm like, fine. Maybe you were with grandma for the afternoon. Maybe you did whatever. I'm not going to sit here and tell you have to put food in your body. What I am telling you is you have to eat this food if you want other food. You can't just like select from the whole fridge or pantry. But it was that mindset shift of like, I don't need you to eat. I just need you to know that no other food is coming. And that was sort of the mindset shift of like, you want to walk off, you want to go read in your room, you want to not be part of family dinner, fine. Because family dinner is going to be a lot better without you here than with you here and fighting. Option one is you here eating, we're having a nice family dinner. But option two is like, if you want to have a fight, go have it with your stuffed animals.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of been like a big mindset shift for us of like, especially for me, of just going, I don't like the thing I'm trying to get her to do is not the thing I actually need her to do. I just need her to not have the fight with me at the table, ruin my dinner.
Right. And, you know, it's nice to, my takeaway is that I can get better because you got better with more time. I think one of the issues, and I'm going to regurgitate some language that my wife and I thought about after the kids were put down tonight, and and she has told me this many times, but she tells me that my expectations for our 5-year-old are too high, and she's probably right. I probably treat her older than she does. Sometimes I feel like my wife has too low of expectations and that she is too lenient on some of the things that a 5-year-old should be able to do. What it really comes down to, and I feel like we've definitely discussed this in other episodes, is that if my daughter's able to do something, I expect her to do it. I expect her, because all we hear is that at school, she's an amazing listener, that she's never causing problems, that if she is given an instruction, she does it. So when she can't do when she can't follow one word instructions like stop or 3 words, please don't talk, it just, the fact that it sometimes feels like she's got a worse memory than a goldfish, which I believe is 3 to 5 seconds. I think that a 5-year-old human should do better than a 1-week-old goldfish, frankly. Maybe I need to recalibrate what I feel is, acceptable and what is not. But that's what really is hard for me. And in the moment, thinking back on her day, I mentioned she was at my mother-in-law's all day. According to my wife, she and her cousin spent all day eating. So honestly, I was feeling bad that I sent her up, that we ended up sending her to her room with just a couple of bites. But I bet you my wife remembered, and I did not, that she actually spent all day eating. So she probably didn't go to bed hungry. So I do feel a little bit better now. But it's definitely just managing the meltdown for me is learning to remember that just because she can do something, it doesn't mean that she's going to do it all the time. Yeah. And I never remember that in the moment because it is just so freaking frustrating. And when you go all week with every single meal of the week just being an argument, especially when she's been involved in the meal plan, as we discussed last week, which was somewhat, helpful for a while, it is just frustrating to manage a meltdown when I just don't believe the meltdown should be happening.
Right. It's illogical. And I think one thing that my wife quite often says to me makes a lot of sense. Like, their brains are nowhere close to fully formed.
Sure.
Their brains are not there. And I think on a more, practical, actionable level, like on a day-to-day, especially around dinner time, my daughter is the same way. Never causing issues at school, never having any discipline problems, always being a good listener. And I think emotionally and mentally, that probably takes a toll on those kids, right? Sure. Like our oldest daughters, that they are holding it in, managing their own emotions, and that battery that they have to do it just gets depleted. And then it's really easy to take it out on mom and dad. And the thing that sort of clicked for me, I saw this at some point from someone on social media, back to the not quoting them, but the reason they do it with us is because they feel safe.
Right.
They feel safe. And like taking the solace in the fact of like, they're yelling at me. They might be saying, you're a poo-poo head. I hate you. You're the worst dad in the world. All things my kids have legitimately said to me. What they actually are saying is, I feel safe enough to talk to you this way, and I would never talk to anyone else this way. I feel safe enough in our relationship.
Yeah, and I know that. My wife reminds me of that with both my kids.
It's hard to remember when you're getting yelled at, though.
Yeah, and you know what? This actually, it's actually something that happens between my wife and I. Sometimes she'll use the same excuse where she feels safe enough to just lash out sometimes, and where I where I get mad and don't handle it well is, and this is about not just about my wife, it's not just about my kids, it's just about anybody who is peeved or having a bad day. I do not mind being someone that people feel comfortable venting to. I actually like that people feel like they can vent to me.
Right.
It is when it is not venting, but it is redirecting anger in a way where I feel like I am being attacked. And when that happens, no matter who it is, I just kind of don't care to hear one's problems anymore. I'm just kind of like, I am here for you to listen, not to be the new punching bag of the day. And I realized that that is not something a 5.5-year-old, an almost 5.5-year-old, if we're being totally honest, is going to understand. But at the same time, it's just, you know, I've mentioned in very, very recent episodes, you know, that I'm not going through the easiest time right now, and I'm trying to not bring it home with me.
Sure.
But, you know, I'm not perfect either. And I try not to turn people who should be in my safe space into the punching bag of the anger I'm feeling. I just, you know, I took one strike to the face today, and you know, in this argument, and you know, I struck back, unfortunately, and it resulted in both a 5-year-old and a 36-year-old getting reprimanded by the same parent. So, you know.
Yeah. And, you know, I definitely, I was having a chat with my wife. We went out for a birthday dinner, for my birthday dinner a couple weeks ago. And we were driving home, and we were just sort of talking about things, and parenting came up. And she just sort of, we don't talk, you know, we'll often talk to each other about how we might have handled something better, or, you know, strategize around next time. Similar to, you know, how it sounds like you and your wife talk after the kids go to bed. We kind of utilize that time sometimes if something was particularly stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And she mentioned to me, and I think this is valid, like that while my patience has gone up, a lot of times I'm always looking to explain. I'm looking to like help my daughter rationalize, because I think like your oldest, we see them as bright kids and understanding kids that like get concepts, sometimes beyond their years. And so I always want to try to rationalize with her, even in a tantrum. And that conversation really clicked with me, and has helped me just over the last couple of weeks, where I've sort of shifted my goal, where I'm like, it doesn't mean you can't explain to your kids. It means picking your spots and waiting until they're calm to revisit the topic when everybody's head is cooler, and you can have a much cooler conversation about it. And maybe it's not you, maybe it's the other parent, not super important. But I used to be in the episode where she ran out of her room and was like hugging the front door. My gut reaction used to be, probably was even a little bit that night, but I fought against it, was to go and be like, you can't run away, and explain to her, like try to argue, even calmly, but like argue every point she was making. And like, no, like this, that, and the other, and like use logic. And what I realized is like, my goal shouldn't be to explain why she is wrong, why she shouldn't be upset, why she shouldn't be having that meltdown. My goal, like, because time and knowledge and life experience will bring to her that this trivial topic is indeed trivial. What I need from her is to learn, and it's only going to come from herself, learn how to self-regulate. And so if she melts down for 10 minutes tonight and figures out how to regulate, and then tomorrow it's 9 minutes and 59 seconds, that is progress. And then eventually she is learning to self-regulate, because what's going to happen in her life is, just like you and me get upset, she's going to get upset. And the cause of being upset is going to change and become more important, but how you learn to regulate and handle yourself around other people is like the core concept of what I'm trying to do. And we basically yesterday, Tuesday was the first meltdown. Yesterday, she had another meltdown. She got in trouble, sort of, with me and my wife. At lunch at school, they have a la carte where you can get chips or ice cream or other things for extra money on top of just the normal lunch that they'll provide you. You pay extra money. And frankly, we have like credit card hooked up to the account, and it just auto drops in $20 anytime her account gets low. But we had a deal with her that she was only going to get a la carte 3 times a week. That's been from day one of the school year. We didn't care what 3 times a week, but 3 times a week felt reasonable. Well, my wife starts talking to her about a chocolate-looking stain on her shirt. Come to find out it's ice cream. Fine, whatever. Somehow the conversation shifts to like, oh, how often are you getting a la carte? And my daughter sheepishly admitting that she's been doing it every day since November. And for those of you that might be watching this on replay, it's April. We were not checking the account. We can log in and check and do all these things. My daughter's kind of sheepishly like, yeah, every day. And then it dawns on her, oh, I effed up. Mm-hmm. And that's when she goes back into, I'm the worst kid. She even went into like, I'm going to unalive myself territory. And then my wife did the thing that she was trying to tell me not to do, but she was the one in the car in the Publix parking lot, having the conversation, trying to go in and get groceries. And in that time crunch, she's the one who's trying to explain to the 6-year-old why you can't say those things, why it's not okay to go there. Why? And she's right. But then my daughter, who is in fight mode, is now arguing about why she should be able to say that and doubling down on saying that and all those kinds of things. She eventually calms down. My wife and the kids go into the grocery store. My wife texts me this whole saga. You know, she's giving me blow by blow as she's letting my daughter just cool her jets till they can get in the grocery store. And so when we get home, my wife decides she's going to take a bath and maybe not necessarily join us for the kickoff of dinner. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there eating with the kids by myself. And I just mentioned to my daughter, and, you know, I was like, she brought it up. She was calm. And she goes, so mom probably told you about the a la carte. And I was like, yeah, she did. And she just sort of talked through it. I go, how you feeling? Right. I asked her, how do you feel about that? What do you think? And we sort of talked through it to try and come to like, what do you think an appropriate consequence should be? How should we solve this? How should we work through it? But this was an hour after the meltdown, not anywhere close to proximity. Mm-hmm. And we were able to have a more productive conversation that she brought to my attention because, frankly, in her screaming match, she didn't want my wife to tell me because she was afraid that I was going to be too mad. And she's batting about 0. She's over her lifetime on like thinking I'm going to blow up at her about something. Mm-hmm. And I never end up blowing up at her about that thing because I'm like, usually when I blow up, it's because I'm surprised and shocked and hearing it for the first time, or like you're putting your brother in mortal danger and like whatever. This was not that. But she did have a line that I thought was really funny. She's in the car. My wife's trying to talk to her. My wife's trying to reason with her. And she goes, you're a poopy head and no one likes you except dad because he's also a poopy head.
Nice. I mean, she's not wrong. 2 poopy heads do tend to, you know.
Poopy heads
yeah, they do.
But, so that's, you know. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, I am also an explainer. That can be the term we use where I want to rationalize. I want to try to expedite the lesson because, again, I see a lot of similarities with myself and my daughter. And I can tell her that the mistake, and you don't have to go through making the mistake. You can just learn from me because I've done it, and it doesn't need to be this way. And you can just be so much happier if you just listened to me And that's also not very fair because she has a life to live. She deserves to make all the same mistakes I do too, or I did. But it can just be, it's frustrating in the moment. And you mentioned earlier, and then we started cooking. But when one of our kids is having a problem, or when the older one's having a meltdown, usually we also tag in, if there's clearly one of us isn't working right, let's try. It just doesn't work when we're already annoyed at each other for whatever. And if nobody is cool headed, we end up in this exchanging 2-on-1. There was 2-on-1 of, it felt like my wife and my daughter at me, but at the same time, my daughter felt like it was 2-on-1 against her. And I did want to ask you about, because in both of your examples tonight, your son's just an innocent bystander. My 2.5-year-old daughter was just kind of sitting there eating her dinner, just watching 3 people yell at one another. And you mentioned your son. You telling your son that you love his sister and you don't want to fight. But I'm curious, is your son usually just there minding his own business? Is he there with popcorn, just watching the action happen? What's his usual cadence during all this?
He is usually, I don't want to say minding his own business or cowering in a corner, but he's kind of like, I think he's accepted that that's his big sister, right? And that's the vibe that she's going to give off. He's definitely more chill. I don't think he's like got his popcorn out, but he does kind of observe, and he might like throw a comment in, but it's about like pass the food, or like he might find something of his own to complain about, to sort of join the party. But it's half-hearted. The one thing I will notice from him, I don't know if this has happened with your youngest, but my daughter's meltdowns, my son and my daughter have drastically different personalities. My daughter is got a huge personality, and my son, while he's perfectly lovely, he is definitely more reserved, right? And I can tell when he gets frustrated and upset that he has picked up habits that he is explicitly mimicking from his sister. He has decided that when he gets upset, he's going to stomp off and he's going to tell us he hates us. He really, really hates us. He hates us so much. You're the worst dad. And I'm like, these are not concept. Like, I don't think you understand best and worst. I think you are copying what you've heard your sister say to try and hurt my feelings because you think that's going to make you feel better. But the problem I have as a parent with my son is, like, while my 6-year-old's issues are not serious, like, you spent a whopping $20 total extra over the course of the school year on ice cream and chips. My son is mad because I won't give him grapes because he's already brushed his teeth. And it's trivial compared to the trivial thing. And so, like, when he sits there and goes, like, is it a quarter? I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. And I'm like, because I wouldn't give you grapes after you brush your teeth? Yes. And with my daughter, I have to use my willpower to not, like, yell back at her or over-explain. With my son, I have to use my willpower not to laugh.
Yeah,
because that's like the other side of it where, like, I have to not laugh at it because it's like, I'm like, this is adorable. You don't know half the words you're using. And what you're mad about is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's actually very similar here. My 2.5-year-old, I'm barely ever upset with her. And I was actually I've been going through a lot of our old episodes recently. It's easy to knock through a bunch of them because I listen to podcasts on 1.75. So I've listened to a lot. I know. I actually had no idea how slow former President Biden was talking, because when I listen to podcasts, he sounds extremely articulate. So when I saw the debate, it was actually very shocking to me. But that's neither here nor there. What I'm what I'm going to say is we did an episode where you and I were discussing, and it was mostly me just from the personal experience side, but we were talking about how I never used to get mad at my first daughter until we had our second kid, because it kind of just changed the 2-on-1 zone defense to a man defense. And the dividing of attention resulted in acting out. And then there was the expectations that I probably artificially put on my older daughter to be a better example setter. And I noticed that I was probably treating her the same way that I felt as the older brother growing up. And it kind of manifests in situations like this where sometimes I feel like my 5-year-old is the one acting like a 2-year-old, and when my 2-year-old does something that is like a 2-year-old, I just kind of laugh it off, just like you. And I find myself in that situation. Like tonight, we're all going back and forth, and the 2.5-year-old's just like sitting there being like, more truffle, please. And because she wanted truffle seasoning on her fish because she is bougie AF. And I just turned to her, I'm like yelling at my 5-year-old, and then I turn and say, sweetheart, are you enjoying dinner? And she goes, yes, Dad. And I said, that's great to hear. I was like, why are you acting? And it's just I then realized, looking back on it just 2 hours ago, I'm right there being all Harvey Dent Two-Face, if you're a Batman fan, right there. And it's just, yeah, I don't know. It's funny because I'm listening back to these episodes, and not only am I going through the same things you're going through, like a year behind, but I'm also, I guess sometimes I feel like I haven't learned anything, because even though it's been a year, just feel like I'm falling through the same traps over and over again. So,
well, the challenge has changed, right? The opponent is evolving, right? She is
true.
She is 20% older than she was a year ago, right? Like she's changing.
Charmander to Charmeleon. Gonna be a Charizard soon. Yeah.
Alrighty, so we're just ripping content from other podcasts from today.
It's true, but it is applicable. So
yeah. So anyway,
you said evolving, man. All right.
Fair enough. Throw in the Pokemon references.
Yeah.
I think for me, the biggest thing has been sort of that bigger view, like taking the blinders off of like, what do I actually need her to accomplish? I need her to be a functioning member of society. How's she going to do that? Right. The other thing that's helped me is like, this might sound weird, but like, speaking of Two-Face, I guess getting into character almost. Mm-hmm. When she starts yelling at me, like, I'm not going to be super weird, but I kind of try to be robot dad is what I call it internally, where I'm not trying to be cold, but I am trying to be matter of fact.
Right.
I understand that you don't want to try this dinner. I understand that you don't like it. I understand that you that you think I'm a poopy head. I understand. What I've said hasn't changed. Like, I hear you, because one of the things in your like first, meltdown story was sort of the like that caught my ear was like the I don't care. Right? Like, I don't care what you said. That's probably going to set them off. Right?
Sure.
Like,
definitely did.
True. Yeah. And it's like, you can say the exact same, you can get the same point across by changing up sort of the wording of like, I hear you, I understand, but this is the rule. And then like restating it. And like, that's kind of like my script. Like, I hear you, I get it, so that the kids know, like, I get it. You're frustrated. And I say this to my daughter a lot. You're allowed to be mad. I'm not telling you not to be mad. What I'm telling you is, even though you are mad, I still need you to do this thing. You don't have to like doing it. You don't have to like me, but we need to get this done.
Right.
and that's not perfect, but it works a lot better than like I don't care or invalidating. The big feelings, no matter how trivial the cause of those feelings is, has been has been a big help. And translating that to other avenues, like when my son can almost guarantee we're going to put him in bed and he's going to come back out once or twice, just to sort of, he's in that phase where he just wants to, hey, what can I get away with? What buttons can I press? It's time for bed. Get in your bed. But like, it's different than my daughter, because when my daughter was that age and she was doing that, she would come out with like a smirk on her face, and like you could tell she was scheming. My son comes out and says like the wildest things, where he just came out the other night and my wife and I are just standing there sort of in the hallway, and he comes out and we're like, get in your bed. Get in your bed. He goes, today in class where the blocks are, we were cleaning up and there was a tiny beetle. We're like, okay. And he just goes, tiny beetle, and then like walks back to his room, and we're like, go to bed. And he closes the door, and my wife goes, okay, but that was like the cutest thing ever.
Yeah.
I don't even understand, but it still works generally with him to be like, okay, robot dad mode. And it definitely works with my daughter to be like, okay, I hear you. I understand that you don't want to get ready, but here's what's going to happen. And saying it matter of factly, here are the options. You can either do this, like this needs to be done. So your options, you can be mad about it, are to do it, or I will do it for you. And because if I lay a finger on my daughter when she's upset, she will cry, and I'm not talking about the times where I accidentally popped her knee into her face, but just like lay a finger on her, she will go, Daddy hurt me, right? It's finding a deflection mechanism to make someone else the bad guy in the situation. And so I start prefacing stuff. I go, you can get your clothes on, or I will get your clothes on for you. If I have to do it, I will be as careful as possible, but I cannot guarantee that you won't get hurt if you're fighting and kicking and screaming at me. And like that also kind of works with her, because then she's like, crap, he's covered the basis where I can't like change the subject, divert it, and like turn this into a new argument about how abusive of a father you are. Right. And it's like, oh, dang, he's covered the bases. And so I think some of that's just a lot of muscle memory and learning, but keeping that even keel, if nothing else, helps my mental state. Maybe I'm not doing the parenting thing right. Maybe I am, but also I'm keeping my sanity, and I'm not like hot and bothered by the whole situation, at least not nearly as much, because I haven't let myself get into the screaming match.
That's good. Yeah, I definitely lost my sanity tonight, so I can't say the same thing. But what I can say,
I want to be really clear sorry to interrupt, but I just want to be really clear. That doesn't mean I never yell. That doesn't mean I never lose my cool. I'm talking about the times where I notice it really works, and I try to remember that the next time. And I usually remember it, but that doesn't mean I always remember it. We're human.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I just had a sweet transition into working on the dad bod, but then you talked again, so I don't have it.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. What I will say, I can do it now, is I did work on the dad bod this week, and I am proud to say that even though I was upset last week that I gained 0.2 pounds, I am actually 2.8 pounds lighter than last week. So when we started season 3, I was 200.2 pounds. Today, right before we recorded, I weighed in at full nude 192 pounds. So I am 8.2 pounds down, and I believe this is episode 5 of the season. So
sounds about right.
Yeah, so I'm working on it, and every single day that I've been in the office since Monday the 17th, I think, whatever that Monday, I think that was the 17th of March. Every day I've gone to the office, I have gone to the gym at the office, and I'm I'm not back to my top strength, but every week I am improving on the workout plan that I've been doing. And, I'm up in my cardio. I'm doing really good with my calorie intake. I still am blowing through the very, very low calorie count I have, but I'm also my watch is, when I go jogging outside, I usually remember to hit record an outdoor run. I never remember to hit record an elliptical. So when I'm at the office, so I'm actually not counting the burn as well as I could be, and it's only kind of factoring in my steps, which I actually kind of like, because it is basically, it's helping me stick to where I want to be. So I'm improving there at least. So yeah.
I have I don't always track like my walks or things. Sometimes if my watch, like if I'm walking for a long time and my watch goes, "Hey, it looks like you're on an outdoor walk," I might hit record. I did it this afternoon. But I also find that depending on what type of workout you've selected on the Apple Watch, the calorie count can vary wildly in terms of like, I don't think that this burns what you just said it burns, or anywhere close. Like, I think I did an hour at the driving range a year or two ago, and it told me that I had just burned like 500 calories, and I was like, no, like it was way off. It wasn't like, that seems a little high. It was like, that seems like 5 times too high. So I tend to use like the flexibility one a lot when I'm shooting basketball or doing cardio or doing flexibility, because I feel like for whatever reason it does a pretty good job of actually just basing it mostly on my heart rate and then doing a calculation. But my other hack is like, I have an automation set up on my phone where I have an app where I track my strength workouts in. So I just track all my like reps and weights and things in an app. And anytime I start a workout in that app to start tracking, it starts tracking on my watch that like I'm doing a strength training session. And it's synced to the watch. And that may be something that I set up. It may be something in the app, because it also has an iPhone or an iWatch thing that I start to like can track the workout on my watch, so I don't have to be pulling out my phone if I don't want to. But that was a whole big aside on calorie tracking. But for me last week I was 178.4 for the second week in a row. This week I was 178.8. And I came into today, like weighed myself first thing this morning, and I was thinking about how I was going to approach this segment of like, well, here's where I went wrong, and here's what I didn't do, and I paused, and I said to myself, okay, I said I was going to stay at my calories that I've established as sort of my maintenance for another week. I've probably overeaten a little bit, but I based this baseline number so that like I could have some give and take and stay at the same thing. So I have maintained. I'm disappointed that I didn't lose weight, but I didn't set myself up to lose weight. I didn't set my calorie count to lose weight. And so I need to change something here. Either I need to change my goal, or I need to change the mechanism by which I'm trying to achieve the goal. And I'm kind of going to sleep on it tonight, because I'm like torn between wanting to, cut a few more pounds and not feel like we've talked about the greens and the yellows on our, scale apps and how much they don't mean. But like, I weighed in at like 179.6 on one day this week, and I was in the yellow, but 178.8 is in the green, right? And like, that shouldn't matter. But I'm like, well, if this is healthy, I want to like, I know that there's some body fat that I could lose and still carry around comfortably. Fine, whatever. So I'm still undecided because unlike you, where you set your calories really low and then blow past them, I actually take the opposite mentality. And this isn't like a right versus wrong thing, but in case this resonates with, 500,000 of you guys, I am the opposite end where I see a larger calorie number. I plug in what I'm going to eat for breakfast. I plug in what I'm going to eat for lunch. I plug in what I'm going to eat for dinner. And I kind of know that. And then, like, after I've plugged it in, my high protein breakfast, my high protein lunch, and probably my high protein dinner, I go, wow, I only need like 5 more grams of protein and I have like 700 calories. What fun things can I snack on today? And then like I get to like plan it. And so my mentality comes from a place of abundance of like I have all these calories and I get to eat and stay within my limits and like holy cow, and it feels very liberating. And so I like that, and knowing that if I cut my calories, and I'd probably only cut my calories by like 200-300 a week to start, or a day to start, and just be more strict about, like not clearing the kids' plates or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Being a little bit more strict would probably be my, opening strategy. And I'm like, well, if I do that, that's fine. But then I need to time box it again because I don't love the restrictive, like eventually I run out of gas on that because it does feel like I'm being handcuffed. And yeah.
So when I plugged in my goals, a month ago when we started, basically what it puts me at is 1,540 calories a day is my goal, and that is not a lot of calories at all.
No.
So the fact that I am undercounting my exercise and I'm kind of overcounting like the amount of calories I'm putting in with regard to just I'm probably going higher. I'm not being exact on either end, but I'm going the correct way in both ends of not being exact. So I ended up eating 2,225 calories today per what I entered. And what I burned with only counting steps was 263, which said that I went over in the net by 422 calories, which actually still puts me at 1,962 calories, which if you go by the conventional wisdom that everybody should be having 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day, which is how they base the, I think that's the number they use when basing like just your calorie intake on like any kind of, anyway, like I still was under in my net of that 2,000 calorie range. So that is why I know I am losing weight. But having that lower number mentally means, because I know I'm never going to hit 1,540, but I can keep trying to hit 1,540, which is better than me trying to hit 1,700. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I get it. But to me, like, I just work differently where the number is the number. And if the thing told me 1,400, like I would figure it the hell out. Like
it's hard because it is hard.
Set it to 1,400, like that's unhealthy, but you get what I mean. Like if I set it to this, I want to like 2,101 feels like failure, but I mean, I'm probably going to give it some thought. I might over the next week decide to cut. I'll start tomorrow if I do. But just trying to, I'm in a good place mentally. I'm in a pretty good place physically. Like I don't, I'm not like, oh man, I'm such a fat slob or something when I look in the mirror. And so that's where I'm sort of juggling the like, is this vanity? Is this health? Is this trying to change something up? What's the root of it? Versus like, I don't know.
I think another thing for me is, I just went to my goal page, and at activity level, I put not very active, which is like the least active option. I put workouts a week at 3, and I put how long am I going to work out? 20 minutes. So right now, I would actually say I'm pretty active because of all the walking I do during the day just to get to work. I've working out roughly 5 days a week, and I'm working out for usually about an hour instead of 20 minutes. So basically, I've set my calories to as if I was literally sedentary all day. And
yeah, that's usually what most people recommend is like to set it at sedentary, because then it's gonna like account, especially if you are wearing whether it's an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or any sort of wearable to track it. Most people recommend setting it at sedentary unless you are like a straight up like construction worker or something,
Sure.
where you are doing something very physically demanding as a job, not just
Right.
having to walk a little bit, or maybe even like a tour guide, something like you're literally on your feet all day, right? Might be different on those numbers, but that's usually what they recommend, because then if your watch or wearable is feeding into that, it's going to account for whatever, right? It's going to account for, and the way chronometer works, or chronometer, never actually heard someone tell me, but chronometer, the way it works is like it takes my like baseline like activity level, which I think is roughly 350 calories a day is what it's set it at based on sedentary. And like it takes my Apple Watch, and like the Apple Watch activity slowly deducts from that. And so I can't get a net positive impact on like my calorie numbers until my Apple Watch activity has passed the baseline threshold that it is set for what my sedentary activity level would be. So, like that's how I've sort of done the math when I changed mine up in this like maintenance phase from I'm going to count my activity and set a pre-algorithmic calorie goal to like, I'm going to set this hard and fast goal. Like I'm going to say 2100 and turn off the setting to track exercise and turn off the setting to track my normal activity. And so those don't get factored in. I can flip a few toggles to see what my deficit is instead of like how much is remaining towards my goal. And I like the display and I like the app, but yeah, I think there's a couple of ways to approach it. And I kind of wanted to, I went with this one because I think by the same accord, I really wanted to try and make sure that like every day was the same, right? In terms of like what I was putting in, and like every day sort of felt routine. That way, like on Sundays where I'm not as active and I'm definitely not going to the gym, and maybe I'm playing with my kids, like I eat the same amount of food and don't feel like I've got to starve myself today because I didn't earn anything with a workout. And I didn't walk the kid, walk or bike with my daughter to school, right? Like I wanted to get out of the earning and just sort of go, okay, let me sort of, do this same thing every single week and not worry about the exercise. Let the exercise just be the exercise. So, and I'm excited to see how it goes. I think I may start out by like just going, okay, from 2100, I'm going to go down to 2000 and see if that makes the scale move, or haven't decided if I'm going to do that or if I'm going to drop it to like 1900, 1850, 1800, somewhere in there, and then go, okay, we're going to hit that number for a few weeks and see what the impact is.
Right. And I want to get to that place that you are as well. I just, right now I'm down 8.2 pounds in about 4 weeks, and I've got 22 pounds to go to my goal weight. So I'm gonna keep at it this way, and then hopefully I can get to that maintained stage that you've been at. So
yeah, and I mean I think it's different stages, right? What drove this for me is one, listening back to some of our old episodes, listening to these segments and feeling like I spent all of last season trying to get below 180.
Right.
And it was just like, okay, I was constantly trying to be in a deficit.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole damn year, I couldn't knock off 10 pounds.
Right.
Okay, there's some fatigue there. It wasn't working. That was a large sample size of me taking microcosms each week of what didn't work. And then like you look at it back in the aggregate, or even just open the scale app and look at the phone, and you're like, things aren't moving. Like things have not moved in some totality for some guy that has been trying to lose weight for 6-7 months. And so that's why I was like, took the holidays off. We weren't broadcasting. We weren't doing the segment. And then January, I just was like, I am going to intentionally like cut, not like try to diet, but that end date. And this is, again, not me preaching to you. It's more just like, this worked for me, was like having the end date of like, I'm going to cut. And that's why I think I want to open that up again, because I am in a good place. I do want to like go, okay, let me try really hard for 4 or 5 weeks to cut another 4 or 5 pounds and then go back to maintaining, but at a lower level for a little bit. And I also think maybe, you know, mentally it'll probably help me. I don't know if there'll be any actual benefits to my body to try and do that, but I'll also be honest that like the other thing that's on my mind is like, yeah, I think 170, 175 be a perfectly fine walking around weight for a guy my age, my size. I'm not trying to compete in any serious sports, just trying to beat a 6-year-old at golf. But there's also a part of me that's like, I like lifting weights. I like getting stronger, and I wouldn't hate to try and like bulk and intentionally add muscle. But I feel like I haven't earned it in the fat loss phase to be in a calorie surplus, because then I'm afraid I'll get fat or something. Yeah. So there's some mental hurdles that you have to work through and get over it.
Yeah. And right now I kind of just, but next week's going to be the real test for me, because if you go back to last season, I was doing great. And then we went on our guys trip, and that kind of started me off on a spiral of a couple of vacations where things didn't go well. A week from tomorrow, I'm flying to Tucson for a bachelor party, and I just got to make sure that doesn't derail me entirely. So, yeah. So, yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in. This is a little bit of a longer one, but appreciate you hanging out with us. Hopefully you did not have a meltdown. If so, I'm counting on you to learn how to manage your emotions, to learn how to control yourself, and be a little bit better next week. That's what we're all striving for. We'll see you then.
Samesies. Bye.
Thanks for working on the Dad Pod with us. Any resources that we mentioned during the show will be in the show notes. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to talk with us, the best place is in the comments on YouTube. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Working on the Dad Pod, and on Twitter at Working on Dad Pod. Following and subscribing is always appreciated. Please rate and review us. That helps get the show to new people. And if you know a dad who would enjoy our show, sharing it with them is a huge help to them and us. Have a great week.